The man who built this estate spent 46 years in servitude. He worked for his own brother, two brothers, one empire, a name worth millions, a hatred that lasted a lifetime. In 1866, a new kind of institution opened its doors on the edge of Battle Creek, Michigan. The Western Health Reform Institute was more than a hospital. It was the physical expression of a growing faith. Seventh-day Adventist leaders believed that the body was a sacred vessel and that health was a matter of spiritual duty as much as science. Their doctrine demanded abstinence from alcohol, tobacco, and even coffee. Meat was discouraged, replaced by grains and vegetables. Sleep, exercise, and fresh air were not luxuries, they were commandments. Church journals from the era, like the Health Reformer, spread these ideas with missionary zeal. One editorial called for 8 hours of rest, 2 slices of graham bread, and no stimulants stronger than pure water. The Institute's charter, signed in the spring of 1866, set out a vision of healing rooted in Scripture and strict discipline. It was a world where the kitchen was as important as the chapel and where every meal was a test of faith. Battle Creek itself became a magnet for believers and seekers. By the early 1870s, the town was dotted with vegetarian boarding houses, hydrotherapy parlors, and publishing offices. The Adventist community grew, drawing in families who wanted to live by these rules. Children were raised on brown bread, morning calisthenics, and daily Bible readings. The Institute's reputation spread, attracting patients and pilgrims from across the Midwest. Inside this environment, the Kellogg family found their place. The brothers grew up under the watchful eyes of reformers who saw health as a path to salvation. They learned that obedience was expected, and that work, especially work in service to others, was the highest calling. The values of the movement shaped every aspect of daily life, laying the groundwork for what would come next, a kitchen that would become a laboratory, and a family whose ambitions would test the limits of faith and loyalty. If you enjoy deep dives into forgotten business rivalries and old American fortunes, consider subscribing. Well, Keith Kellogg entered the Battle Creek Sanitarium as a boy and never really left. By the time he was in his 20s, the daily routine had become relentless. Payroll ledgers from the 1890s record his name beside a staggering figure, 120 hours a week. 16 hours a day, 7 days straight, with no distinction between Monday and Sunday. He managed the books, counted every sack of flour, and reconciled every cent that passed through the kitchen. The numbers were his domain, but the authority was never his own. The job stretched far beyond ledgers. Each morning, Will ran beside his brother's bicycle as John Harvey made his rounds through the sanitarium grounds. Photographs from the era show Will in a suit, trailing behind, clipboard in hand, while John Harvey steered and dictated instructions. The image became a daily ritual, the older brother, always in command, the younger always in motion, never quite catching up. Inside the offices, the hierarchy was spelled out in ink. An internal memo dated March 1915, preserved in the Kellogg papers, ordered that Will be addressed as Dr. Kellogg in all official correspondence. The title was an honorific, never earned but imposed for the sake of the institution's image. Staff were instructed to correct anyone who failed to use it, and Will wore the badge as required. The gesture meant to elevate instead became a quiet humiliation. He was the bookkeeper, the assistant, the man behind the numbers, but always under his brother's shadow. The payroll ledger tells its own story. Week after week, Will's signature appears beside the line for assistant to the superintendent, the hours tallied in pencil, the wage fixed at $3.75. No overtime, no recognition, just the expectation that every task, no matter how tedious or exhausting, would be done. The work built discipline and skill, but it also built resentment, a tension that would simmer for decades. If you enjoy deep dives into forgotten business rivalries and old American fortunes, consider subscribing. The Battle Creek Sanitarium under John Harvey Kellogg's command became a proving ground for medical ambition and mechanical ingenuity. The building itself buzzed with the rhythms of a health factory, pipes hissing with steam, timers clicking, and the constant churn of machinery designed to reform the body. In the hydrotherapy wing, patients cycled through a regimented series of baths, hot vapor rooms, cold plunges, and rain showers, each calibrated by temperature gauges and clockwork valves. United States Patent 726452, granted in 1903, covered one of John Harvey Kellogg's signature inventions, a temperature-controlled bath apparatus that promised to purify the blood and stimulate the nerves. The diagrams stamped with his name show a maze of copper coils and adjustable levers, all engineered to deliver the precise shock of hot and cold. Electricity entered the picture in the 1880s. The sanitarium's electrotherapeutic cabinets lined a dedicated treatment hall, their polished wood panels concealing galvanic generators and oscillographs. Patients sat inside, electrodes strapped to their limbs as currents pulsed through their bodies. Promotional pamphlets from the period described these sessions as restorative baths of light and energy. Critics in medical journals questioned the science, but the spectacle drew national attention. The Battle Creek Evening News called the sanitarium the University of Health, a place where technology and faith merged in pursuit of wellness. Diet was no less engineered. The kitchen operated like a laboratory, testing recipes for digestibility and moral purity. Brochures from 1899 extolled the virtues of nuttos, a meat substitute made from peanuts, and granola, a baked wheat and flax mixture. Every meal was weighed, measured, and justified in the pages of Good Health magazine. The daily menu, 2 slices of graham bread, a cup of boiled carrots, and oat milk, reflected a belief that food could discipline the soul as much as the stomach. Physical exercise, too, was mechanized. The gymnasium featured Swedish gymnastics apparatus, a mechanical treadmill, and pneumatic massage chairs. Patients performed calisthenics under the watchful eye of instructors, their routines recorded in ledgers alongside the day's therapies. John Harvey Kellogg presided over this world as inventor, superintendent, and high priest. Patent drawings, machine orders, and staff manuals all bore his signature. The institution's identity fused his ideology with machinery, legitimizing each new device as both medical breakthrough and spiritual aid. In this environment, food experimentation was not a sideline, but a logical extension of the sanitarium's mission, which would soon reach beyond its walls. Steam hissed through the pipes of the first cereal factory on West Grand Rapids Street. In 1906, Will Keith Kellogg oversaw the installation of a mechanized line that could flatten, flake, and toast grain at a scale the sanitarium kitchen had never imagined. The process began with a patented steam roller designed to press cooked wheat into thin sheets. These sheets traveled to a rotating flaker, where sharp-edged drums shaved them into delicate, irregular flakes. Last, the flakes moved into cavernous toaster ovens, rows of iron doors, each one releasing a wave of heat and the faint, nutty scent of browning grain. The numbers from the factory ledger were staggering for the time. 500 pounds of wheat flakes each day in the first year, then 2,000 pounds daily by 1908, once the rice line was added. Electricity use soared, with the switchboard recording 150 kilowatts on a busy morning. The plant's output dwarfed anything the sanitarium could produce by hand. Will's signature appeared at the bottom of every production sheet, his initials beside every supply order. He managed the payroll, negotiated with grocers, and hired operators for the new machines. The scale of the operation transformed a bland patient food into a commodity for the American breakfast table. Packaging evolved as quickly as the machinery. Early boxes were plain brown cardstock stamped with a black ink label, Kellogg's Toasted Wheat Flakes. By 1910, the boxes bore colorful wheat illustrations and a cursive Kellogg's logo. A full-page ad in 1911 promised, "Give your children the breakfast of health." The cereal's reach spread from local grocers to national chains, helped by the first licensing deal with a Canadian distributor in 1912. No longer just a health food for the sick, Corn Flakes became a staple in homes across the country. The leap from kitchen experiment to mass-market product set the stage for a new kind of conflict, one where the value of a name and the right to claim it would be measured in courtrooms and headlines. In March of 1915, the Battle Creek Courthouse received a filing that would drag the Kellogg brothers' rivalry out of the shadows and into the public record. John Harvey Kellogg the Elder petitioned to block his brother's company from using the family name on boxes of cereal. His brief, thick with references to decades of medical reputation, warned that the public might confuse the sanctity of the sanitarium with the clamor of a breakfast table. Will Keith Kellogg, by then the president of a booming cereal business, fired back through his own counsel. He argued that trademark law was not a matter of family pride or medical legacy, but of commerce, and that the cereal box and the sanitarium door were two different worlds. The legal argument spilled across hundreds of pages. John Harvey's side pointed to signatures in sanitarium pamphlets dating back to 1885, insisting the Kellogg name was a mark of health, not just a surname. Will's team countered with advertisements, invoices, and factory ledgers, each one stamped with the stylized script of Kellogg's Corn Flakes. They argued that the real confusion was not among consumers, but within a family unable to separate business from blood. The case reached the Michigan Supreme Court in early 1922. Newspapers in Battle Creek and Detroit ran headlines that read like family scandals. In the courtroom, the justices weighed the evidence and delivered a decision that would echo through American trademark law. Justice John B. Miller wrote that the name Kellogg may in equity and law be used by both parties, provided it is not so used as to mislead the public. The court allowed both brothers to use the Kellogg name, but required clear, distinctive labeling: Kellogg's Corn Flakes for Will, Dr. J. H. Kellogg's health products for John Harvey. The ruling was a technical victory for Will. It secured the brand that would fund a new chapter of wealth and recognition. Yet the court's language, dry and precise, could not resolve the deeper rift. The Kellogg name would now appear in two worlds, one on the shelves of American kitchens, the other in the corridors of a fading sanitarium. The legal battle had been won, but the cost would soon become clear, not in ledgers or court records, but in the private lives of the men who fought it. On the north shore of Gull Lake, past the last bend in the road and the sweep of open fields, a mansion rises from the landscape, a house built not just of stone and timber, but of years spent in the shadow of another man's will. In June 1924, Will Keith Kellogg put pen to paper and sent a letter to Detroit architect Charles A. Miller. He asked for a home that would reflect permanence, English heritage, and the healthful spirit of the sanitarium. What took shape was a neo-Tudor estate, its half-timbered facade and steep slate roof echoing the manor houses of another world. The cost, $425,000, a staggering sum in the 20s, covered imported limestone, dark-stained oak beams, and leaded glass windows etched with sheaves of wheat. Every detail was deliberate. The wheat glass motifs in the windows offered a quiet nod to the empire that paid for every brick. Even the private chapel on the second floor, with its carved pews and stained glass, seemed to fold the family's old faith into the new order of wealth. Invoices from Miller & Sons show the scale of the ambition. 12 mature oaks transplanted from the sanitarium's grounds, a greenhouse built for exotic plants, a windmill modeled after those that once powered the healing springs. Correspondence with landscape architect Frederick S. Moore details the selection of each tree, the grading of the lawns, and the careful placement of the lakefront dock. The house was meant to be a showpiece, a physical statement that Will had left the world of ledgers and kitchens behind. Yet for all its grandeur, the mansion's isolation spoke as loudly as its opulence. The Tudor arches and wheat glass windows looked out over the water, but inside, the rooms were often silent. The estate stood as both reward and reminder, a monument to a life spent earning, and a fortress built to keep the world at bay. The ledger from June 1932 records a single cold sentence. John L. Kellogg is terminated effective immediately, and all powers are vested in President W.K. Kellogg. Will had dismissed his own son from the company, ending a partnership that had once seemed unbreakable. The board minutes offer no explanation beyond gross mismanagement. For John L., the exile was total. He left Battle Creek that summer, his name erased from payroll and company correspondence, the family's business legacy abruptly severed. 3 years later, another blow. In September 1935, Will's grandson Kenneth was admitted to Michigan State Hospital. The medical note lists acute psychosis, severe anxiety, hallucinations, and depression. A family letter from Dr. John Harvey Kellogg expresses only sorrow and the hope that clinical care might bring relief. The details remain private, but the contrast is impossible to ignore. The Kellogg name, once used to sell wellness and fortitude, now appeared in the hospital admission log beside a diagnosis of collapse. The years that followed offered little peace. By 1949, Will's eyesight had faded to darkness. A diary entry from that year describes evenings spent alone, listening to the wind off Gull Lake while the house fell silent. The diary reads simply, "The darkness gathers. I must trust others to see for me." He withdrew from board meetings, delegating decisions to others, the daily business of empire now carried out in his absence. The mansion, once a symbol of triumph, became a place of waiting and retreat. These losses, the loss of a son, a grandson, and of sight, were not the result of market forces or legal defeat. The cost of ambition was measured not in dollars or court decisions, but in the quiet unraveling of a family. On April 12, 1943, John Harvey Kellogg set pen to parchment and began a letter addressed to his brother. The words that open the page are formal, almost clinical. "Dear brother, I write these lines with a heavy heart, for I have spent my life in the service of health, yet have been blind to the wounds I have inflicted upon you, both in business and beyond. May this small parchment convey my sincere remorse, but the letter itself would never be read by its intended recipient." The vellum envelope, catalogued as KF-193A in the Kellogg family papers, remains unbroken. Its red wax, pressed with the Kellogg family crest, is still intact. A conservation report from 2021 confirms the wax is original, the iron gall ink unchanged, the paper untouched by any hand since the day it was written. The accession file notes that Will's niece, Margaret Kellogg, donated the letter to the Battle Creek Public Library in 1975, stating that her uncle had kept it among his personal effects, unopened, unread, and preserved as it was found after John Harvey's death. There is no record of Will's reaction, no diary entry, no reply. The apology sits in the archive, a silent witness to a lifetime of rivalry and distance. For decades, scholars and family members have debated whether the act of leaving the seal unbroken was a final refusal or a gesture of forgiveness too painful to bear. The letter's words, meant to close a wound, remain locked away, the wax holding tight to secrets neither brother could bring himself to face. In the quiet of the archive, the envelope endures, a last unopened attempt at reconciliation, suspended between remorse and silence. Today, the Kellogg name sits on billions of breakfast tables, yet the mansion on Gull Lake stands as a silent monument to ambition's cost. In a world still driven by brands and rivalry, the lesson remains, not every legacy is measured in fortune. A fortune built on Corn Flakes, a legacy divided by pride, a name that survived, but a family that did not.